Najee Harris stinks, man. But that's
Does he?
no, he doesn't. He doesn't. But trying to kill some time here while I get my Najee Harris. He's got some of the worst metrics in the NFL among running backs. It's alarming. He does not have a run. Okay. 579 career carries. He does not have a run longer than 37 yards. That is really bad for Najee Harris, but also, I don't know. Just look at all the advanced metrics that I look at a lot. He ranks toward the bottom in most of them. What do you got? Najee Harris, I think, is the winner here. Trust or bust Najee Harris. Same range as Aaron Jones. Round 3. I'm going to say, all right, I'll just, since I've been so opinionated today, I'm just going to say bust. He just hasn't been a good running back. And I think he depends on high volume. And his role in the passing game is uncertain without Ben Roethlisberger. I don't, what did he have last year? He had 41 catches in 17 games. That's not good. He did leave one game early. If he continues to underperform, I could see him losing his job to Jaylen Warren. I could see it. I could see at least him losing half of his job, losing some of those reliable touches. If he gets down to 15 carries per game or something, that is a total bust. This guy is extremely volume dependent. He's going to have to be a better rusher than he's been in his first 2 years for him to come through, in my opinion. So I'm going to say bust Najee Harris in the 3rd round. Jamie?
No, I'm going to trust him. I think the additions that the Steelers made this offseason to their offensive line, including bringing in a very good run blocking tight end, are going to significantly help the situation for Najee Harris. And so, yes, the reception total is, I think, clearly what boosted him, in his rookie campaign. But I also think you got to look at, for the last 2 years, he's run behind a terrible offensive line, with Roethlisberger at the end of his tenure and then the first year with Kenny Pickett. Then the hope would be is that Pickett maybe, develops a little bit more as a quarterback and trusts his running back to catch passes. Your point is definitely valid. If he struggles, I don't know to what extent he struggles, but if he struggles, then Jaylen Warren might take over because clearly Mike Tomlin likes Jaylen Warren. And it might be the first time that we see multiple backs used consistently because they talked about that last year and it never really came to fruition. But I think just you look at the volume for Najee Harris, I think the Steelers offense is going to be better this year than it was last year because of the improvements on the line, the improvements of Kenny Pickett. So Najee Harris being that guy is going to, I think, just lend itself to him producing at a higher level. And we saw that at the end of last season. Maybe as Pickett got a little bit more comfortable and Najee sort of settled into his role a little bit more as not necessarily just having to be the go-to option for Roethlisberger, more so a traditional running back. So, yes, there are some alarming things about him, but I think everything that the Steelers did this offseason gives me reason to trust him.
I don't know if you can find one stat that makes you feel good about Najee Harris other than the workload. And even the workload in the last 6 games, he was playing right around 60 to 65% of the snaps in most of those games. So they were kind of treating him as the 1A back and Warren as the passing downs, third downs type of guy. Still couldn't average 4 yards per carry. I know that he was healthier during those games. All the issues that he had with his foot. Yeah. But I mean, everything from his rush EPA, yards before and after contact, explosive run rate, avoided tackle rate. That was supposed to be something that he was great in. Man, there's nothing good to say about it. And so the only thing that you can look at Najee and say, all right, this is what I'm getting with him. And it's almost like you have to cross your fingers on it, is workload. And you have to hope that he finds a way to get 21 touches per game, which is what he was averaging in those last 6 games.
His last even 4, then, it was 22 or more touches in every game.
Right. Okay. But I think that it's hard to buy into him as a number one, even a low-end number one running back. And you're going to be a little squeamish when you take him in round 3. It's just a matter of how you feel about Najee versus other running backs in the range that we're talking about. I think people are going to end up taking Mixon ahead of him, ETN ahead of him, Aaron Jones ahead of him. And he's going to fall into a range where you're going to have to make a decision on Najee versus Kenneth Walker, Dameon Pierce, J.K. Dobbins, Jahmyr Gibbs. And it wouldn't surprise me if the guys that had a profile to be better pass catchers or just explosive runners went ahead of Najee. He's not going to be a popular guy.
Well, all the negative things I said about him, I actually do think it's pretty easy to make a positive case for him because he doesn't really have great competition behind him. And I say Jaylen Warren, maybe, but it's kind of like what you were saying with Ramondre Stevenson. He doesn't have great competition behind him. There's no serious threat there. Like, for example, David Montgomery Harris reminds me of David Montgomery, guy who could just get so many touches and be a reliable fantasy starter, not necessarily going to win you your league. But Khalil Herbert ate into the workload a little bit, but I don't know that they have a Khalil Herbert on this team. And so after the bye week, they not only did maybe he get a little bit healthier because he hurt his foot just before the season started. That's a huge deal, right? He could have been playing with a foot injury the whole year, Najee Harris. After the bye week, he was the number 7 running back per game in half PPR and number 9 per game in full PPR. They ran the ball a lot more. They scored a lot more. They had TJ Watt back that made a huge difference. They had the ball more. Their defense got better, and they ran and ran and ran. So it's not hard to make the case for Harris, but someone's going to be a bust in round 3. Half of round 3 is probably going to be a bust. And
half of round 1 might be a bust.
Hopefully not. But some of these guys I have to say bust on. So I guess Najee, I guess I'm being harsh, but all right. Anyway, last one is TJ Hockenson. TJ Hockenson, how about Scott Fish? You want to critique Scott Fish's team? His first 4 picks were a former Viking, then CeeDee Lamb, and then 2 current Vikings, at least for now. Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, TJ Hockenson, Dalvin Cook. He took Hockenson 36th overall. Hockenson does have the potential to be the number 3 tight end in most drafts. We shall see. That will be a debate certainly for the offseason or for the rest of the offseason. But trust or bust, TJ Hockenson is, let's say, a top 4 tight end and a 4th or 5th round pick. Dave.
I hesitate a little bit to say trust on Hockenson. He did average 13 PPR points per game in his last 10 against Minnesota, but that includes this monster game against the Giants. And if you take out that monster game against the Giants, it's 10.4, which is all right. I mean, you'd be happy if your tight end gave you 10 PPR points per game, but I don't know if he's going to be a game breaker anymore. I think adding Jordan Addison is going to be a huge deal for the Minnesota Vikings. They already have Justin Jefferson. I wonder if Hockenson devolves into a touchdown or bust type of tight end. So I think I'm going to come out on the other side of this and say bust on Hockenson.
Jamie, trust or bust, TJ Hockenson?
I mean, certainly if he's going around 3, he's a bust, and it's one of those scenarios where, I think it's just, if you compare him relative to the position, okay, so he's in a crowded offense. Well, so is Dallas Goedert. So is George Kittle, and how much is he better or worse than those guys? Does he have the ability to be more proven based on what his career has shown you than what Kyle Pitts has shown you in the early part of his career? And, are you taking the chance on the upside of Pitts, or are you taking the chance on what Hockenson has shown, even if you factor in his Detroit tenure? So if you really buy into Jordan Addison, and obviously, Dave and Heath have said that they do because they've knocked down Justin Jefferson a slight peg, by dropping him from number 1. So you're going to say, okay, this is a better version of Adam Thielen in terms of Addison. So that's going to obviously impact the entire offense, and should, if that's how you feel. I do think, though, that Hockenson is still got the opportunity to be second on the team in targets behind Jefferson. He's going to compete with Addison for that role. He might be second on the team in touchdowns, just depending on how Kirk Cousins decides to use those guys in the red zone. Is he going to rely on the rookie? Is he going to rely on just, completely going to Jefferson? Or does Hockenson have those chances as well? And if they lose Dalvin Cook and this run game gets even worse because it wasn't exactly great last year, then maybe they become just more pass happy, and it's all about these pass catchers and they all thrive. So I think Hockenson for me right now is still the 3rd tight end. But I do think if you're talking round 3, I'm out. Round 4, I'm probably out. Round 5 is probably where I would start to look for Hockenson. And I would say he's in a similar range to the guys for me that are behind him, which are Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert, and then Waller and Kittle. So I think he's definitely closer to that group than he is to the top 2 guys of Kelsey and Andrews.
And the story on Hockenson is he's a nice, reliable tight end. He just does not make big plays. Basically throughout his career, it just doesn't do it. He's not an explosive player. So I could.
Yeah, two games like that though last year, right?
Well, 3 actually, if you count the playoff game, which was also against the Giants. He had huge 30-plus PPR point games against the Seahawks and the Giants in the regular season, and then in the postseason, he had something like 120 yards. Didn't score against the Giants, but it's the playmaking ability. It's just not really his thing. So anyway, TJ Hockenson is our last guy here on Trust or Bust.